bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
All right, good evening, everybody. Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Monday, April 17th, 106 days into the new year, just 259 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States, hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black. For KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Good evening, everybody. How you doing? All right, tonight we have a very special guest back with us, Giorgio Tsoukalos. He's here. We're going to do a full show tonight discussing ancient alien theory. Tomorrow night, Cortland Dahl will be here. We're going to talk about his new book, Geographic Mysteries of Sir Francis Bacon. Wednesday night, Maureen St. Germain. We're going to be talking about dragons and your 5D self. Thursday night, it's another Fader night with John Rappaport and his No More Fake Newsroom Live. The call-in number is 323-825-5045. Follow me on Twitter, at JChurchRadio, Facebook, YouTube. Everything is Fade to Black. You know what to do. Sandbox is hashtag F2B on Twitter. Come and hang out with us. Any questions or comments during the show tonight, use hashtag F2BQ. You can email throughout the show, Jimmy@JimmyChurchRadio.com. All right. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Just go to the banners at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Custom apps, Apple and Android, $2 a month. Go click on the banners. Check out all of our sponsors. Life Change Tea. GetTheTea.com. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black plan, and Studio Dome speakers. And they have put together the Fade or Not special. Two SBB2 speakers and a hard shell case just for you guys. $129 all in. That includes shipping. And the promo codes for everything are on the banners over at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Contact in the Desert is coming up May 19th through the 22nd in Joshua Tree, California. Tickets and info over at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Of course, Giorgio will be there. So will Jacques Vallée, Graham Hancock, George Norrie, Robert Bavall, Robert Schock, David Wilcock, Corey Good, Jim Mars, Richard Dolan, Andrew Collins, Linda Moulton Howe, Whitley Strieber, David Sarita, Mike Barra, many, many others. Just go and click on the banners right now. I'm going to be hosting a couple of panels, one on Sunday night, one on Saturday night, and we will be broadcasting Fade to Black live on Friday night. All right, all the info you need is over at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Just go and click on the banner, okay? There you go. Food, lodging, whatever you need. Happy birthday to, let's get this show cracking. Happy birthday to Sean Bean. Today is 71. All right, you know him from Game of Thrones. I know him from the movie Silent Hill. Tool frontman Maynard James Keenan today is 53. Our dead guy's birthday today is Roddy Piper. 1954 to 2015, died at the age of 61, known as Roddy Piper. He's one of the World Wrestling Federation superstars back in the 90s. Starred in one of the great sci-fi films of all time, They Live. I call it a documentary. On this day in history, OTD, 1961, the Bay of Pigs invasion begins. Also, on this day in history, in 1970, Apollo 13 returns to Earth. Fader fact. Over $43 billion worth of unopened, editable food is thrown away every day in the U.S. There you go. Every year. I have technical issues in the studio today. We've got no bunker cam. I'm missing phone lines. Hopefully we will have Tsoukalos here on time at 7:30. And we'll have a couple of seconds before that when we break into commercial break to make sure that we have phone lines. Okay, all right. Tonight, very special guest, Giorgio Tsoukalos. We're going to discuss ancient alien history. Always a good night when he's on the show, so I look forward to it. Tomorrow night, Cortland Dahl is here, and his new book, Geographic Mysteries of Sir Francis Bacon. Wednesday, Maureen St. Germain. Thursday, another Fader night with John Rappaport. I want to talk really quick about a UFO case that you probably have never heard of, and a person that you might not have heard of. And it is the Mauritius Bay crash retrieval case. The Long Island UFO Network has publicly stated since October 1995 that a major UFO incident occurred over Mauritius Bay off of the south shore of Long Island. At that time, this body of water and its adjoining communities were experiencing the highest volume of UFO activity reported in Suffolk County. Its founder, John Ford, maintains that the United States government, through its actions of its armed forces and intelligence community, intercepted and retrieved an alien spacecraft for Mauritius Bay on September 28, 1989. He also claimed that the action was carefully planned and executed. It was an operation that was meticulously formulated some 6 months in advance. The purpose of this action was to bring down an alien spacecraft, described as a triangular wedge-shaped craft measuring some 574 feet across. And that was at its widest point. It was to enable the United States to retrieve its technology and propulsion drive system. Remember, 574 feet across, this went down in 1989. Now, as I speak to you tonight, John Ford is in a psychiatric hospital. For over 20 years, he's been locked up. The circumstances of his arrest and past involvement with an alleged UFO crash retrieval incidents at Mauritius Bay, Long Island, are profoundly disturbing. John Ford founded the Long Island UFO Network in 1985. He investigated UFO sightings and alleged abductions. He held public meetings and sponsored conferences. He leafleted and did flyers and organized demonstrations. He also produced the Long Island UFO newsletter, which was regularly received and enjoyed by enthusiasts around the world. And it was in that newsletter that he first wrote of an extraordinary incident, which the alleged UFO had been shot down in 1989 by American military forces over Mauritius Bay in Long Island. He later claimed to have uncovered details of a similar crash back in 1992 in South Haven Park. And when an unidentified object reportedly came into the Pine Barren regions of Long Island 3 years later, he insisted that the fires in the region had been deliberately lit to act as a diversion. Now, he spoke of having gleaned his information from officials within the New York City police and fire departments, members of the public who claimed to have seen a fireball descend into South Haven Park. John Ford simply wouldn't take no for an answer and became a genuine thorn in the side of the authorities. He repeated his allegations through public meetings and demonstrations held outside police headquarters. Then, on the 12th of June, 1996, John Ford was arrested. He was arrested in what police later described as a classic sting operation. This followed the use of telephone taps and paid police informants who were hired and wired to monitor and record conversations. Almost a year earlier, Ford had confided to close friends and associates that he was convinced he was the victim of a deliberate plot to harass him. He went so far as to claim that the plot might even entail his murder. I have seen the news reports out of Long Island. I have seen the police press conferences on the matter. It is one of the most disturbing UFO cases in recent memory. And it might even go to the extremes of Paul Benowitz. Shortly after his arrest, Suffolk District Attorney James Catterson told journalists gathered for a press briefing that Ford had been charged with conspiracy to murder and possession of radium without a license. The intended murder victim was John Powell, the leader of the Suffolk County Republican Party. The means by which Ford intended, according to the police, to carry out this act? By placing radioactive radium in Powell's toothpaste. Now, first off, radium may be radioactive, but Powell would have to brush his teeth in radiated toothpaste for about 80 straight years to accumulate any kind of dose, by the way. So if that was the murder plot, it was a bad one. District Attorney Catterson held two press conferences and compared the significance of Ford's arrest to that of the Unabomber. Other charges made at the time against Ford were subsequently dropped, but the conspiracy to murder charge was deemed serious enough for the judge in the case to deem that Ford's bail will be set at $500,000. It gets much, much, much more disturbing. The Long Island UFO network, of which, today, technically, John Ford is still running, even though he's locked up in a mental institution. But one of the members, his name was Joe Mazzucchelli. And Mazzucchelli is said to have been dragged out of his vehicle in the previous winter and physically beaten by four men who told him to stay out of their business. Now, Mazzucchelli was also arrested with John Ford on June 12th. John Ford did not hold back with his friends and with the Long Island UFO network and his public speaking and with the police and everybody else who would get involved because he felt that he had high-placed whistleblowers that told him exactly what went down. And I'm going to get to that detail in just a second. But no matter what, anybody that knew John knew that he was a cool guy. His head was in the right place. He never bothered anybody. And this is the general consensus about John Ford. And certainly he wasn't crazy. And with him and these investigations, and there was a big UFO flap over Long Island going on for a few years up to this point, and he was in the middle of these investigations, photographing and witnessing and collecting witness testimony and conferences and just doing his thing, putting out a newsletter and of course, starting the Long Island UFO Network. And Ford, like many researchers out there, everybody wants to break a case, right? That's what everybody wants to do. They want to be able to be at the right place in the right time to see something, to stumble across something, to have something just appear in the sky and you're there. You know, you've got witnesses and you get your incident and you can start to prove to the world which you have suspected all along. Now, the 1989 Mauritius Bay incident and his investigation of that particular affair contained a suggestion that the technology used to bring down the alien spacecraft originated at Brookhaven National Laboratory, also based on Long Island. Mauritius Bay is also, and this is where it gets crazy, Mauritius Bay, if that doesn't ring a bell to you, it's also the spot where TWA Flight 800 mysteriously crashed in July of 1996. The cause of that disaster, to this day, has eluded federal law enforcement and aviation investigators, despite the 20 eyewitness accounts from people who claim to have seen an unaccountable light streaking towards the 747 aircraft moments before it exploded. The exact same spot. Now, Ford had done a tremendous amount of work beginning on the evening of the incident, and his investigation involved mapping. It involved interviews. It involved collection of what might have been bits of the wreckage. He did on-ground searches. He did surveys. He even did a couple of aerial flybys and searches. The group claimed that there was a collision at 90,000 feet. At least 2 vehicles came to Earth, and wreckage was spread over a wide area. One object crashed near the South Shore and South Haven Park, which in reality is a pine forest. And this was after passing low over a main highway, Sunrise Highway. And it was seen close up by several motorists. The object, described as a rod, passed out of sight. Shortly afterwards, there was an explosion, followed immediately by a large fire that lit up the night sky. And then a second object came to Earth in the grounds of Brookhaven National Laboratory, which was a few miles to the north of South Haven Park. The amount of eyewitness testimony, I mean, there are a lot of eyewitnesses that have gone on record as to what they saw in the sky that night. Now, after being grounded for several hours, the object exploded as it tried to take off. Again, witnesses. The Long Island group obtained a videotape from a source which they refused to name. The first video was taken at the South Haven Park by a fireman who was one of the first on the scene. These firemen arrived before government forces came, and the video was, of course, confiscated. The group's copy came from a government source. The video, which is of poor quality and taken at night, shows figures being moved and laid out. It also purports to show, in one close-up, an insectoid figure. In the second video clip from the same source, shows an explosion of some sort that appears to be associated with a building or object or craft. Now, the group claimed it was a disc or a lifeboat type of craft that came down to the grounds of Brookhaven. All those closest to John Ford have all said the same things, that he demonstrated beyond any reasonable doubt that his track record as a UFO activist is probably second to none. He investigated UFO sightings and alleged abductions, held public meetings, and, of course, sponsored conferences. Well, he was talked into pleading insanity. Yeah, talked into pleading insanity. His lawyer at the time and some people around him just came in and said, dude, you're not going to win this thing. You just need to plead out right now. Just plead insanity. The judge will go with it. So will the DA. Just plead insanity. Then you don't have to go to trial. You can't beat this. When the police showed up at his house, and you should see the video. It's all there. You can find it. Police show up. It was an ugly scene. And they confiscate everything in the house. They had search warrants for certain things, but they left with everything. All of his UFO research papers, all of his, just boxes and boxes and boxes, videotapes, everything left the house. Computers, everything left the house. Then they found some guns. right? This is Long Island, New York. Everybody's going to have a hunting rifle or 2 or 10. It's not that big of a deal. But, of course, he's a UFO researcher, and he's crazy because he's got guns, too, right? And that's the way that they made him look. They never made any announcements on anything. He never spoke in the public. The only thing that he said public between his arrest and when he was taken away in handcuffs was not guilty. 2 words. He was talked into pleading insanity. Now, his co-conspirator Joe that was arrested that same day, right? He did 6 months in jail. He's out. He's been out for 20 years. Not John Ford. John Ford pled insanity, and 20 years later, he is still a patient at the Mid-Hudson Forensic Psychiatric Center, whose patients are consequent to judicial findings of incompetent to stand trial. That's right. Every patient there were admitted by a court order. So this UFO researcher, that's it, a UFO researcher, is in a psychiatric hospital with real troubled people. Think about that. Killers, bad people. And he's been there for 20 years. Now, his claims are that he got close, and that he had a scientist from Brookhaven say, dude, ET's not only been visiting here, but we've got monitoring satellites up there, and we are able to check out their craft, and we're trying to figure out exactly what the propulsion system is, but we're getting really, really close. And that was just one side of it. He got so close to something that involved Brookhaven and the government and 2 crash retrievals that he was silenced. They took him out. Why would somebody spend 20 years in a psych ward at a criminal hospital? It's one of the most bizarre cases of all time. I don't know what his state of mind is today. I can only imagine after 20 years in a psychiatric hospital like that for criminals, and the amount of drugs and treatment that he's been under, where he is at today. Trying to erase his mind. It's a disturbing account. And I don't know. And when I talk about Paul Benowitz so much, but there are so many other researchers that have been silenced over the years that have died or disappeared. The list is long, and so many that have just chosen to walk away because we know that there's something going on. And once you are there, once you cross the line, you're either with or you're not. Either you're running with the man or you are not. And he chose not to run with the man. Somebody chose to feed him some information. And the similarities between Benowitz and this case are bizarre. Just like Benowitz, Ford had somebody come up to him and say, hey, it's real, and this is what's going on. And to have the same thing happen with Benowitz, but to have this happen to John Ford, he is alive. He is there right now at the Mid-Hudson Forensic Psychiatric Center as I speak right now. And what is it? What is it that he did? Even if the crazy sting operation, it was a sting operation, by the way, by the police. He was set up for that. He was 100% set up. But even if, he should have been released a long, long, long time ago. It's just disturbing beyond words. Just disturbing beyond words. Well, really quick, before I get out of here, I got to get Giorgio in here, and I've got to get a couple of things sussed out. But breaking news today, one crew member was killed and 2 others injured today in a U.S. Army UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter crashed on a Southern Maryland golf course. The injured crew members were taken to the University of Maryland Shock Trauma Center in Baltimore. The Army said one of the injured crew was in critical condition, while the other one is in serious condition. They have not released their identities or names yet, but a witness who worked at the pro shop of the Breton Bay Golf and Country Club in Leonardtown said that he saw the helicopter flying kind of low and then just saw it start spinning before it went down between the 3rd and 4th holes of the golf course. And what's strange here is the crash came less than 2 weeks after an F-16 fighter jet also went down in Prince George's County in Maryland. Pretty crazy. All right, this is Fade to Black. I'll be right back on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. My guest tonight, Giorgio Tsoukalos. We're going to discuss ancient alien theory. And that's a full 2 hours with Giorgio. I'll be right back. Stay right there.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hi, folks. Let's wind the clocks back 60 years. Food was different. Food provided health and nutrition, and using supplements was minimal. Unfortunately, now we have chemicals, GMOs, herbicides, and pesticides that can be quite lethal in the name of our food supply and, of course, the ever-loving dollar. Supplementing our diets can be very important to stay healthy. Cleansing from daily intruders to the body might be critical. Live strong and take charge. Log on to getthetea.com. Our herbal tea is a great way to cleanse from intruders. Our supplements is a great way to maintain and improve your health. When your health is not up to par, go to getthetea.com. No GMOs, no fillers, and organic. And very helpful in keeping you at the top of your game. Life is too short to feel, you know what I mean. Stay in the game, at the top of your game with getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Again, getthetea.com.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Chase Kletsky with Fate Magazine Radio, and you're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station where the Fader Knots rock.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Manson. You're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Giorgio Tsoukalos is back with us. He is the real-life Indiana Jones, and he is changing the way the world thinks about Ancient Astronaut Theory. For over 17 years, he's been the director of Erich von Daniken's Center for Ancient Astronaut Research, Archaeology, Astronautics, and, of course, the SETI Research Association. As the world's leading ancient astronaut expert, Giorgio has starred in and appeared on the History Channel, Travel Channel, National Geographic Channel, Sci-Fi Channel, Coast to Coast AM, and of course right here at Fade to Black. Speaks at all kinds of international television and radio programs and ancient aliens, UFO hunters, reporting on the latest discoveries in the ancient astronaut fields. Now, you can follow him on Twitter right now at Tsoukalos, and of course his Facebook fan page is Giorgio Tsoukalos Fans on Facebook, and I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black our good friend, Giorgio Tsoukalos. Giorgio, good evening.
How are you doing, Jimmy? How are you doing, Fadernauts? Everything going well?
Yeah, man. How about you? What's your world like these days?
Very busy. I just returned from India about 2.5 weeks ago, and I am right now, while I have you guys on the phone, I am packing for my trip to Japan, all for the new season of Ancient Aliens.
Okay,
I'm leaving tomorrow morning.
Thank you for that, man. But I'm going to ask you this, and I was going to save it for later, but I'll say it now. Did you have any idea, my brother, that here you would be on this show in 2017 talking about the 30th season, right? I mean, it's just crazy, isn't it?
No, absolutely not. And anyone who says that they thought that would happen, it's not true. I mean, all of us are incredibly grateful, and we feel very, very happy that we've been able to do over 120 hours of television so far that came from one 2-hour documentary that was basically, done after the new Indiana Jones movie came out, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and the same company that did a documentary on the Indiana Jones movie, they later approached me because I also appeared in that documentary for about 4 seconds, and they said, would you be interested in doing a love letter to Chariots of the Gods? And that was Kevin Burns of Prometheus Entertainment that approached me at the time. And, it was a 2-hour collaboration. And here we are in season 10 or 11 or 12 or whatever it is. I know that it's at least 120 episodes. And so, you know what? I have to thank people like you, but I also have to especially thank fans worldwide who made it happen that they demanded more and more episodes. So thank you, everyone.
Well, and another obvious question is, we all grow up and we watch TV and we do things and go to the movies, but this career path for you, I feel like, I want to hear your answer. Was it an accident?
No, I don't believe in coincidence nor accidents, but however, yes, I have to admit that, and this is not having to admit, but this is the truth. Before I was able to do what I do now full-time as my career path, I was a promoter of professional bodybuilding contests.
Right.
However, what is, not often discussed is that the day when I began to become, or when I decided to be a professional bodybuilding promoter, I also began Legendary Times magazine. And, at some point, this was around 2005, both career ideas became quite intensive. And so due to some certain circumstances, I had to make a decision, well, which one do you continue? And I chose the aliens. And, for a few years I was thinking, what the heck were you doing? You made good money with bodybuilding, but everything has a reason. So I'm very happy that, and the extraterrestrials or the aliens, if I told you this in one of my previous interviews with you, I've had a love for them since I was 5 years old.
Right.
So, therefore, one might call it coincidental, but personally, I definitely, this was in my dreams. And the fact that I'm living it, that is the thing that I pinch myself almost every day.
You and I have broke bread together. We've sat, we've hung out, and you and Rita, myself, and we've been able to engage. But the one thing, Giorgio, is that the fans, quite frankly, they love you. And I think, you were at the right place at the right time for them to go, you know what, here's our guy. This is our guy. And I watch them come up to you constantly, and they just want to thank you. And you're so gracious. And I know I want to ask you, do you ever get tired of it? But I think the answer is no, because you're fully appreciative of everything that is going on around you.
Well, because here's the thing, and, we can never, ever forget this. The reason why your show is successful is because of the Fadernauts. If you weren't enthusiastic about being a great radio host, nobody would tune in. So, the reason is that fans appreciate who you are, and the fan base grows. And so I am where I am 100% because of the fans, of the appreciation of this chord that the show has struck worldwide. And I personally, at this point, I cannot forget that. And, so if somebody comes up to me and they want to take a picture or they want, something, I'm there for them. And no, I would have never imagined that, never.
Okay, now let's get down to some nitty gritty. Let's get down to some the thing that froze me in my tracks, and I've told you this many times over the years, was that original Puma Punku segment, right? That wore my DVR out. I watched it so many times, I was in amazement. And I know that your feelings about that. But since then, Göbekli Tepe has certainly bursted onto the scenes, and I find that very interesting. But now we also have Antarctica, which is what everybody wants to talk about. Do you think that your view on Puma Punku could possibly shift, that there may be something else as amazing right now on planet Earth?
Of course, because, we've only uncovered or unearthed a certain percentage of what's above ground. And even currently at Puma Punku, the last time I was there was in October of 2016. But before that, I was there. Hello?
Oh, I'm here.
Okay. But before that, I was there in August of 2014 or something like this.
Right.
And in those 2 years, the archaeological survey people there at Puma Punku and Tiwanaku, they uncovered a whole bunch of other stuff. So I think that it's time for us worldwide to utilize ground-penetrating radar, and this is where, in Antarctica, that technology could come in very handy, because who knows what is essentially right in front of us, but maybe, 10 or 20 feet in the ground. And if we discover stuff that's 20 feet in the ground, that also means it's old. So, we have the technology, and I hope that with shows like Ancient Aliens, there are some people that fund projects worldwide that look at this stuff and are like, well, we have access to this technology. Maybe we can explore what these guys are looking for. Because I think that will be, or that is part of the paradigm shift that is happening right now.
Do you see an Ancient Astronauts episode in Antarctica?
Absolutely. In fact, I think we had a season last season. We had an episode last season that talked about the pyramids, the underground pyramids in Antarctica. And, this season, for example, like I just said, I just returned from India. I'm leaving for Japan tomorrow. So who knows if next season one of the talking heads are put on a plane to go and see what's up in Antarctica, because we always like to be in front or at the scene instead of just talking about it. This is what's so amazing about Ancient Aliens, that we actually travel to the places to see what people have written about in their books.
Do you think it's possible that you could get a crew down there? The rumors about it being locked off and just unapproachable for us civilians, right? It's just a locked off area. Do you think Kevin Burns could actually pull that off?
If anybody can pull it off, it's him. Yes. But at the same time, it's a continent. It's gigantic. It's huge. So, I think it would be great to just visit the area, just to get an idea of the scope, because, who knows what's underneath that ice? Because if we follow the whole idea of the Piri Reis map, then we know that underneath this ice cap there is land. And who knows what will be revealed if we were to utilize ground-penetrating radar. Or, I guess, if we wait long enough, then those ice caps will be molten anyway, and maybe we'll get to see it one way or the other.
I want to talk about the seeding possibilities of Earth. Okay, let me reverse it, actually. If we here, you, Giorgio, if you had an opportunity to go to another planet, and it was Earth-like, right, and you land on that planet, would you kickstart a civilization there?
Well, that's interesting you should ask that, because this is basically how I've been starting my lectures for the past 20 years, where, one day our civilization, whether it is for survival or just for exploration, we will arrive at a distant planet in the future. And I'm not saying that this will happen in our lifetime, but hopefully within the next 5 or 10 generations. And if we happen to encounter some type of intelligent life, but that intelligent life is technologically speaking primitive, well, what will we do? Will we just, stand back and observe? Or will we teach them a couple of things, how to make fire?
Right.
Or, agriculture and engineering, astronomy, mathematics, all those things. Now, obviously, of course, at first, we will just observe and look how they live and maybe to see if they have a societal structure. But then, ultimately, I think that we have enough of a good heart to go forward and explain to them a couple of things in astronomy, mathematics, all those things I've previously mentioned. And the way we will do this is by appearing in front of them. And the way we'll appear is we'll come down from the sky in some type of vehicles. So not because those people on the ground are intellectually primitive, but only technologically primitive, those people will immediately look at us as some type of divine apparitions, as gods. And both you and I can agree that that's not us. We're not gods. We're just, advanced space travelers that may have a couple of good ideas morally and philosophically speaking, but that's about it. We still have the same questions about God and life afterwards and things like that. And so we will impart this knowledge upon that society, and then we'll leave, and I guarantee you 10 or 20,000 years into that planet's future, they too will have stories and legends and mythologies of some weird gods having descended a long time ago in their distant past and giving them knowledge. And all that stuff will be relegated into the realm of mythology.
There'll be cave paintings with some dude with whacked out hair.
Yes, something like that, exactly. Or a remnant of a Fadernaut T-shirt. Or something like this.
Right. And I'm okay with that. But let me ask you, I am okay with that, by the way. Is there something ethically or morally wrong with that? Or do you think it is okay to actually kickstart? I'm sure that we will. I'm asking about the ethics side of it, though.
I think it's perfectly plausible and correct because I think the spreading of knowledge and the spreading of intelligence is paramount in the universe. So, quite frankly, there is, to spread culture, to spread civilization, to explain to a technologically primitive society how to make ways with their own survival, like agriculture, or to teach them about the tides through astronomy and things like this,
right?
Which ensures their further continued survival. I think that should be, for any living being, that should be our paramount interest, to be able to pass on intelligence and to pass on information. So, and of course we will have to make a, I wouldn't do this for a species, let's say, and to really, and of course this is a joke, but let's say we encounter a species that's from the Ridley Scott movie with Giger's Alien, and they happen to be, they don't know yet how to do anything. Well, we're not going to teach a species that looks like Giger's Alien. Let's teach someone that, is similar to us, where no potential threat could exist. Now, of course, I am talking wishful thinking, but at the same time, I think these discussions need to be had. Whom do we teach? Because, I think that we ourselves, we've also been taught a long time ago, and we're still here. We've had the potential, or we're having the potential to make something great out of our civilization, and I think that we're well on our way to fulfill that promise or that idea.
Now, and if you flip that over backwards, because I said before the question I was going to flip it. Now, if we flip it back over, if we would do that, and that would be a goal, and I think we would do it, wouldn't the aliens have done the same thing for us, right? I mean, there's no reason not to suspect that they wouldn't have the same goodness in their hearts or exploratory, right?
And I'm so glad you bring that up because, especially a lot of the skeptics, they always accuse me or attack me, and then not just me. I mean, all of us in this field that are considered, in this alternative history or this alternative past question about the extraterrestrials, it's something where you basically just have to ask the question and you explore the idea, and then the skeptics, they can come up with whatever answer they want to give, but see, they have never scratched the surface of the question. I mean, a lot of the skeptics have been regurgitating things from the 70s, and because if I hear one more time in this day that Pumapunku does not have any gray andesite, and that I'm a liar for suggesting that Pumapunku has a granite or andesite, well, I don't know what to say, because I've been there many times. There are a lot of people who go there every day, and the archaeologists and the guides will tell you that Pumapunku is full of gray andesite, and yes, there are also red sandstone blocks there, but to say that that's not true, that's complete and utter misinformation.
Yeah, and even if it's red sandstone, they're not carving that intricate stuff with chicken bones, 1,000 years ago.
With the red sandstone, the problem is there. Yes, you could conceivably cut it with something soft, not as soft as chicken bones. I mean, you can you even use your fingernails sometimes. But in the case of the red sandstone at Tiwanaku and Pumapunku, the size of that stone is so big that it begs the question of transportation, because we're at an altitude of 12,800 feet, which means that the trees that could have been cut down for the wooden rollers never existed, because at a certain altitude, no trees can grow because you're above the natural tree line. And so we have two questions. How was the red sandstone transported? Some blocks are as heavy as 120 tons. And then how was the gray andesite, how was that cut? Because the copper tools that were found in that area cannot cut gray andesite. They may have been able to cut the red sandstone with that, but even that is questionable. So we have a question mark, and, what's wrong about exploring the question mark?
I was watching an interview the other day with an engineer that builds skyscrapers, right? And he was asked about directly about the pyramids in Egypt and 50-ton blocks, right? And he goes, "Look, man, we have cranes that can go 100 meters in the air. We've got those, but 10 tons we would struggle with." That's his, that's his answer, right? With the best that we've got today, 10 tons with one of those massive cranes is something that they struggle with. And then you start to bring up these other things like bailback or 20, 30, 40, 50, 200-ton stones, and the word impossible comes into play. I still, Giorgio, I scratch my head.
No, absolutely. And you're right, because I have never suggested that we can't do things today, but in order to move a 500-ton or even a 250-ton block, like you just mentioned, we would have to use cranes, and a crane is not, a 2-foot apparatus. A crane is 100 feet tall.
Right.
It's a massive machine, and it requires energy and, a pulley power and all this stuff. So, something doesn't make sense. And, I know that David Childress has been on your show many times.
Right.
He says that, it had to have been easy for those people, because nobody in their right mind would cut a 500-ton block or a 250-ton block and move it across the desert if it weren't easy. Whether you had labor or not, it's physics. And so, the question is, how was it done? And when I hear ancient stories of these bizarre things that they had, like these incantations or white powder that turned into water, and when you poured it over the block with some magical incantations, all of a sudden those monoliths or those blocks would levitate or walk themselves into place. Well, we should look into these things and question whether or not our ancestors somehow had access to levitation or the melting of stone. Who knows? But it's a valid question.
It is. And also, we talk about Giza a lot, and we should, but there are so many megalithic sites all over Egypt where the tonnage of these blocks, and they are by the hundreds. They're all over the place. I'm talking about these, 50-ton blocks and how they transported them. So I did the math, right? Okay, so we have the Egyptologist view of 20 years for the Great Pyramid. Okay, 20 years. Okay, so let's just say that that's valid, which it's not, but let's just say that it is. To get one of those 50-ton red granite blocks in the King's Chamber came from Aswan, 500 miles to the south, went across the desert. Now, if they went, check this out, Giorgio, if they went 1 foot a minute, 1 foot a minute, 1 foot a minute, dragging it across the desert 22 years between Aswan and Giza. 22 years, 24 hours a day, no break.
Just for the transportation.
Just to drag
that does
it.
not even take into consideration the placing of the stones, right?
Yeah, or raising it, putting it into place, and it's just so that kind of erases that dogma, right? It just doesn't fit. Now, there's one other thing I want to ask you about before we hit this break, which we've got 2 minutes. The preciseness of the King's Chamber has been talked about a lot, and we all get that. Can't put a razor blade and can't get a credit card in the seam. But what's more fascinating to me, and I want your thoughts on this, is the fact that it has stayed that precise for almost 5,000 years. It hasn't shifted, right? There's earthquakes. There's, it has not come apart. It's as if it was built yesterday. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely amazing, and it's really interesting that you mentioned the King's Chamber, because right outside the King's Chamber is what you call the Grand Gallery, and in the late 90s, this German engineer by the name of Hans Jelito, he actually went into the Grand Gallery to investigate the stone that we have there, and he found out that it's this type of rose granite that's inside the Grand Gallery. And anyone who's ever been inside the Grand Gallery knows why it is called grand. It is absolutely huge, because in order to walk into it, you're not walking, you're crawling through a very small crawl space, and then even before you enter the King's and the Queen's Chamber, you have to once again crouch down, and you crawl again. Now, inside the Grand Gallery, though, he took a whole bunch of very high-powered flashlights, and he determined, how if you cut out granite from a quarry, sometimes the stone has a natural grain or a vein to it.
Yep.
Well, he determined that inside the Grand Gallery, the stone is in the exact same position as it was at the quarry, at least 80 kilometers or 50 miles away, where you can actually see in between the seams, you can see the vein or the grain of the marble or the granite. It goes from piece to piece.
Wow.
It's insanity.
Wow.
And that requires logistics and planning and all sorts of things. So it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is. It is. Let's take a break right here. I still, when it comes to the granite, and when we come back, I'm actually going to ask you about this. Copper chisels, which is impossible, rope, and stone hammers made those smooth surfaces. We'll talk about that when we come back. Our guest tonight, the one and only Giorgio Tsoukalos. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. More with Giorgio right after this short break. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Hello, I'm Kat Deely, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Sobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. Well, yes. We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And I'm Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. And you're listening to Jimmy Church. The Revolution.
What's up, Fadernauts? Studio Dome loves Fade to Black and the F2B audience so much that they have put together the ultimate stereo Bluetooth system. They've done it just for you. Man, check this out. The Studio Dome SBB2 stereo system is here. It's featuring 2 Studio Boombox 2 SBB2 wireless Bluetooth speakers, packed in its own custom hardshell case. This Studio Dome system features the very latest in stereo Bluetooth technology. The 2 full-range boomboxes are in true wireless stereo. You've got to hear this. It's amazing. It's just $129, and use the promo code JCRTWS, and you'll also get free shipping. It's simple. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on the Studio Dome banner. Go Beckley Tepe.
Balance of Nature's fruits and veggies.
I was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. I went from being able to work 14, 16 hours a day with no problem to where I could barely walk a block to the store. I went on to the phytonutrients about 6 months ago, and within a couple of months, my medical doctor had cut my prescriptions down in a little bit smaller dosage. The next time I went back a month later, I walked into the doctor's office and he says, "My gosh, what's happened to you? You don't even look like the same person." He looked at my legs and the swelling had gone down. My blood pressure was down. The venous stasis ulcers that I had had on my legs for the last 4 or 5 years because of the poor circulation were all healed, and I'm feeling far better.
The new challenge will allow you to receive 2 months of Balance of Nature's fruits and veggies free. And we'll even ship them to you free. Call now for details. Call 1-800-246-8751. Or go online to balanceofnature.com. Use promo code TALK.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Giorgio Tsoukalos. And this portion of the broadcast is brought to you by Life Change Tea. Just go right now by clicking on the banners over at jimmychurchradio.com. It'll take you straight to getthetea.com. Just mention Jimmy when you order, either online or over the phone, and you're going to get yourself some free shipping just because you're a fade or not. Yeah, Giorgio, if you drop my name, I'll get you free shipping.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to ask you before we move on, because I do want to talk about these smooth glass-like, pool table surfaces.
Okay.
I want to ask you about Robert Clotworthy. Robert, is he the fifth Beatle?
He is a rock star, really. I mean, look, he is our narrator for Ancient Aliens, but he has, really a cult following because, as some of you may know, he's also the voice of Jim Raynor on StarCraft.
Right.
And, so I'm told often, and also Robert has, heard this from the fans especially too, that, Ancient Aliens wouldn't be the same if it wouldn't be narrated by Robert Clotworthy. And so I'm really happy that you mentioned him because, he goes into these readings cold because, he's a narrator.
Right.
And so he tells me every time, because we see each other 3 or 4 times a year, and every time I see him, he's like, I just had a recording session yesterday, and it blew my mind because it was such amazing stuff. And, I'm really, really delighted to have him on board. I mean, he's a really great guy.
Did you hear that, Robert? Hold out for more money. That's what Giorgio just said. And could you imagine, Ancient Aliens without him? I just couldn't. And which I have to ask, how did he come on board? Whose idea was Robert?
Well, so he was a narrator on previous Prometheus Entertainment projects and productions, and so But by the way, he's also the narrator of The Curse of Oak Island.
Right.
So I think he's been with if I'm not mistaken, I think he's been with the Prometheus family for quite a while. But, what an amazing choice. And that, I have to say, was Kevin Burns' idea.
So do you ever, does he speak in Clotworthy when you guys are just hanging out?
Let me tell you, yes, he has been asked, and there was one time where Kevin Burns pulled out his phone and he's like, now I want Robert Clotworthy to say Ancient Astronaut Theorists say, and then, I gave the answer or something. And but no, of course, he has a normal voice, and he turns it on for the show. But, yes, I mean, he wouldn't be a voice actor if his voice inherently wasn't sexy and alluring. So,
right. You get settled into a new episode of Ancient Aliens, and you hear Robert, and you're just like, okay, let's go.
Yes, right? So it's this familiarity, and it's this. It's wonderful. So thanks. That was amazing.
Now, glass top. When I see the different quarries and the different stone hammer, balls that are in the quarries, and that's how they pounded these things out. And you look at that and you think, okay, that kind of makes sense, except. Then you look at these glass-like surfaces, and they're found all around the world. They're not just in Giza, right? These glass, flat, perfect surfaces. How can a skeptic explain that? I have issues with that.
That's something very strange, because there are about 4 or 5 locations around the world where this is a phenomenon that's referred to as vitrification. And vitrification basically means that if stone has been liquefied into glass and then it hardens again, it's very, very smooth on the surface. For example, at Pumapunku, when you touch the surface of some of the stones, or also at Ollantaytambo in Peru, but that's not in, because Pumapunku is in Bolivia, Ollantaytambo is in Peru, but there you have also spots where you can touch the surface of some stones, and even from looking at it with your naked eye, you can see in the sunshine how polished, but not polished in a sense that it was worked with a leather cloth or something like this. And what's so interesting is that when I was there in Ollantaytambo in October or end of September of 2016, I pointed out that section of one of the blocks at Ollantaytambo that displays this vitrification, this very, very highly polished surface. And one of my expedition members, after about 5 minutes of looking at it very closely, came up to me and he said, "Did you ever, look at this very closely?" And I said, "Why?" And he's, well, come over here. Let's, look at this. And there were tool marks. It's as if the surface of the stone was softened. I mean, you could even feel it with your finger. And so, usually when these glass-type surfaces are on the ground, archaeology says, well, it's due to, the exposure of heat, maybe the sun, or maybe some impact or something from a meteorite. And that's simply not the case, because in our case, we have blocks that seem to be vitrified. And the one way that such a thing is possible is if they were able to somehow soften or heat the stone and mold it into place. And at Sacsayhuaman in Peru, outside of Cusco, there is an entire mountain that looks as if it had been molten. And archaeologists say, oh, well, it's just it's just a glacier and whatever. But I'm sorry, I don't think that was the case, because I have spoken many years ago to a geologist, and he said that yes, this could be a geological feature, but because this area of Peru never really had any glaciers or any ice and snow, that particular part. Of course, there's ice and snow in the Andes, but not in Cusco or in Sacsayhuaman, or for longer periods of time. That was the reason, that it could be another reason why we have those features. And who knows if they, in my opinion, I'm answering the who knows question. In my opinion, those people somehow, I think, were able to manipulate granite or andesite or, igneous rock. And, we do it today. So, the stories are there that some of that quote-unquote magic, you just exchanged the magic for technology, and it says that technology was given to the builders through the gods. Who were the gods? Extraterrestrials. It's as simple as that.
When you look at the walls in Cusco, there's only one real way. Okay, let me say it like this. I'm going to do this quickly so I can get the question out. If you are going to carve those random sizes and shapes, you would have to modify the rock, pull it down, see if it fits, smooth it out, place this 20-ton rock back up into place, see if it fits right. It's okay, we got to take a little bit more off this side, pull it back down. That's what an artisan does, right? It would have taken them thousands of years to do that. But instead, they are perfectly placed, perfectly shaped, irregular, and it's beautiful. But the only way to have done that, Giorgio, is to heat them, to make them malleable, right? So they could mash them into shape and not necessarily carve them into shape.
Well, that's the whole point, exactly, because otherwise it would have meant that, all these blocks, because you can't just be in the quarry and, cut a block and then arrive at the construction site and then the block doesn't fit. So, there is this question of logistics. And, there are these very interesting marks on some of the stones at Sacsayhuaman that indicate that perhaps they were made right there on the spot. And what many people, like when I took that group at the end of 2016 to Sacsayhuaman, I always keep my mouth shut the night before we go places because, I don't want to give away what you're about to see. And I'm always curious because I'm an observer of people. I'm always curious to see how people react when they get there. And when people arrived at Sacsayhuaman, the first time you walk out on that plain, I don't think anybody spoke for about 5 minutes, but everybody was slack-jawed. And the same, by the way, happened at Pumapunku, where I've had at least 5 people come up to me and say that this was their dream come true. So, to be able to show this weirdness to people, that's what I enjoy most about my job, that I get people to think, because, I had a lot of engineers on the trip as well that, work in construction, and they look at these things and they're like, this is very bizarre, or they recognize parallels to modern construction techniques, and that is where my ears perk up.
What do they say?
Well, basically, one guy, especially at Machu Picchu, told me that, it's as if the stone seems to be some type of geopolymer. Now, the geopolymer idea is not new at all. In fact, it was proposed by Dr. I forget his first name, but his last name was Davidovits. And Davidovits was a Frenchman, and he essentially proposed that the pyramids, the blocks, or many of the blocks, were never transported from a quarry, but they were actually created as concrete, or a type of concrete, right there on the Giza Plateau, because he discovered in sandstone, he discovered types of shells and mussels, but he also, in a couple of blocks, discovered human hair. And this is research that he, proposed and published in the 1960s, and it's correct research, and it was completely forgotten. It was completely ignored. And, I think that the idea that our ancestors somehow were able to turn stone into malleable concrete, it's a possibility.
Yeah.
Like, modern-day putty.
Yeah. All options should be on the table, and nothing should be dismissed. And you know why? None of us were there.
Yeah, well, that's always an argument that a lot of people make, and it's like, yeah, duh, yes, exactly. But you're right, absolutely. And so this is this entire conversation, by the way, is all based on speculation. It's all based on questions and the exploration of a possibility. But it seems that in this day and age, the exploration of a question is looked down upon, and that, to me, it's just strange.
Yeah, every time I see, I know that you've been to the Met in New York, and I know that you were just filming out there, too, as well. You go to the Met, you go to the Egyptian section, and I suggest to every Fadernaut that is listening to me right now that if you can't make it to Giza, go to the Met in New York and go to the Egypt wing. And go look at some of those sarcophagus that are there, and there's one in the Dendera room, the big glass room outside. That sarcophagus, and you know the one that I'm talking about. That thing is 30 feet long, 10 feet high, 10 feet wide. I have no idea what the tonnage is. The lid has got to be 10 or 20 tons. And you look at that, and
polished basalt, yes.
Yep. And you go up and you knock on that with your finger, with your knuckles, and you realize how hard, how heavy, and then take it one more look and look at the carving and the hieroglyphics and how that is done. And
there are no mistakes.
None. It's beautiful. And I just don't know. I cannot explain that. I just can't. And especially at 2500 or 2000 BC, and how they got them. Okay. How did they get, Giorgio? Don't say magic. Don't say aliens. But how are they getting those sarcophagus in through tunnels and around corners? How does that happen?
That's a really fantastic question, because we have a tomb at Saqqara. It's called the Serapeum, and inside the Serapeum there are granite sarcophagi. Sarcophagi is the plural of sarcophagus, and so you have multiple boxes in there, and they're all made out of black basalt. But the problem is that the access point, the corridor or the shaft that goes into this amazing, gigantic, multi-storied vault is smaller than some of those sarcophaguses that have been put inside, which means it's which has two answers or two conclusions. Either there is another underground or subterranean access point, or we are going in the direction of what you called just now magic. But it was never magic. It may have been some type of a transportation system, but that, even in my opinion, goes too far into the realm of science fiction. But I will not preclude that idea or that question, because there are stories of pharaohs that sat inside a chamber, and then they became as bright as the sun, and then they disappeared. Well, how the heck would they know a story like this? Because that's a 3,000-year-old story of Star Trek's transporter. So, what if science fiction, slowly but surely, is becoming science fact, or what is science fiction was science fact 5,000 years ago. And that's simply my exploration and nothing else.
Yeah, and when you look at the sarcophagi there, first off, it's not one, right? It's by the dozens. That's the first thing.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And they're gigantic. I mean, you can stand next to them, and if you are a 6-foot person, you can barely reach the top of that box, and then on top of that, you have another lid. That's the lid themselves range on average to be about 65 metric tons. Those are the lids alone, and the boxes themselves are like between 100 to 150 tons. And what's really fascinating is that in the 1920s, and 1910s actually, some of those sarcophagi were actually sealed, and they thought that this is a worldwide sensation because they thought that they had finally discovered the final resting place of the sacred Apis bull. And the sacred Apis bull in Egyptian mythology was this celestial bull that descended from the sky that had a cross on its tongue and a cross on its forehead, or a lightning rod, kind of like a Harry Potter bull type of,
Right.
And and it was a very a gruesome creature apparently, and everybody was afraid. And so they thought that maybe they discovered, or finally they had discovered the final resting place of that Apis bull in one of those gigantic sarcophagi. So they opened an unsealed sarcophagus where they thought that, and they actually opened the thing up only to discover a stinking mass of asphalt, meaning bitumen, with a whole bunch of crushed up bones at the inside of it. And they were able to identify maybe 10 or 12 animals, but then they also discovered bones of an unknown animal. Nobody knew what that was from. Now, here's the problem. In ancient Egypt, it was absolutely anathema to crush up the bones of any living organism that had died, because in ancient Egypt, it was mandatory for beings that had died, whether it was a human being or an animal, to be mummified so that they could be resurrected in the future or to be preserved for the afterlife. And here we have a sarcophagus that contains the crushed up bones of formerly living beings. This is completely contradictory to the laws of Egypt. So what the heck was inside, or what did they not want to come back to life?
Right.
The idea is the Apis bull, because it was too much of a monstrosity, and so they just let that thing die out, because the extraterrestrials who possibly created that thing, they weren't there anymore. So, but that is weird, and those are things that most of mainstream archaeologists, or Egyptologists, shall I say, are not really talking about, and I wonder why.
Well, they're scared. First off, they would have to backtrack on so many different points of... Right? I mean, they would have to do nothing but make corrections. Plus, they'd have to print a lot of books. Right? They would have to print a lot of books. Before we head to the break, let me... I'm going to ask this for the Fadernauts. Is there a point in a conversation where you wouldn't say it was aliens?
Well, I've always said that our whole our entire history is based on alien intervention.
Right.
But of course, there are points where it's not aliens. Because we are a magnificent species, and I guess it's just a sign of the times where things are just thrown into overdrive. But I'd be remiss to say that everything is aliens. Of course it's not. I mean, a lot of stuff, is our inherent genius. However, the initial tools that has turned us into the genius society that we are today, and I'm referring to our global, worldwide society, is due to us having received guidance a long time ago. And, that's maybe something I missed to mention earlier, but, even the aliens, before they were able to travel from planet to seed us, they too had help from aliens. So you play that entire game backwards to the very beginning of time, and my friend and mentor would have to concede, Erich von Daniken, in saying that at the beginning of it all, if there ever was a beginning, that is God. That is creation. That is the universe. And we have the universe in us. We are the universe. So we are the future, whether we like it or not. We have to all band together and make it work, because we are the only ones, all of us, that can make or ensure the survival of this planet.
And what's wrong with that, Giorgio?
Nothing.
Why does academia fight it? Why do they fight it, man? It just doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, and this is what's so interesting in living in this day and age, that clearly we disagree on a whole bunch of things, but in the end, we're all on this planet together, and we all have the same type of questions, and I just returned from India for 3 weeks, and there was a big eye opener, and the bottom line is that this planet is so huge, we have still the same questions. So it doesn't matter what corner of the planet you're from, we're all together. So let's explore this together. So when I hear all this nonsense that's going on with North Korea, and it's disconcerting, and I wonder, what can be done to have a reasonable conversation. So it's very strange. It's very strange right now.
I agree with you, and we're going to head towards a break right here. But you know what I say to that, Giorgio? I'm glad you brought that up. This is what I say. I think that we've just been in the same room for too long, right? You know what I mean? On this planet where, we're starting to get a little edgy. If you were locked, you could have your best friend or whatever, and you guys are locked in a room for 20 years. After a certain point, somebody's got to go. Right? And it's the same thing here. We need to start looking out instead of, I think we're just frustrated. We've been around each other for too long here. And
but we were never best friends with North Korea, so that presents a little bit of a problem.
Yes, it does.
No, I know what you mean. I'm being facetious.
Yeah,
Jimmy.
I know you are. I know you are. Our guest tonight, the one and only Giorgio Tsoukalos. This is Fade to Black. We're going to take a break. When I come back, I want to ask Giorgio, once and for all, what was the Great Pyramid built for? And we'll find out after the break. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Hey there, quick question for you. Would you be okay with more energy, more endurance, thicker, healthier hair, a better mood, reduced appearance of wrinkles, improved sleep, improved blood pressure and cholesterol profiles, improved vision, improved memory? Okay then. Well now, have you heard of Nature's Youth RSF? It's from the anti-aging experts at nature'syouth.com. Nature'syouth.com. See, at Nature's Youth, they understand exactly what it means to provide top-quality health products. And Nature's Youth customers not only improve their health, they know they're also providing their body with the right nourishment to maintain that peak performance and fight the aging process. If health, wellness, and nutrition are what you desire, Choose Nature's Youth RSF. I did. You see, you're going to get older. It's just up to you how you feel when you get there. Get started today. Nature's Youth RSF. Simple to use, simple to order. Go to naturesyouth.com. That's naturesyouth.com. naturesyouth.com.
I was introduced to this remarkable product, Balance of Nature Fruits and Veggies, and to say it's amazing is an understatement. Balance of Nature provides the nutrients of 9 to 11 servings of 31 different whole ripened fruits and veggies per day, and the cost to the consumer for 9 to 11 servings is about 22 cents per serving, as opposed to over $1 in the store. Balance of Nature Fruits and Veggies helps boost the immune system by over 720%, and they also provide a health coach for you at no charge to guide you with any questions you may have. And you can also visit their website for testimonials on balanceofnature.com. So take steps to give yourself better overall health and call them now, toll free, at 800-246-8751. That's 800-246-8751, or go to balanceofnature.com right now. Make sure to let them know you heard it here by using promo code TALK for a special discount. That's balanceofnature.com and use promo code TALK.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Giorgio Tsoukalos of Ancient Aliens. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You can follow Giorgio at Tsoukalos on Twitter. And Giorgio, right before the break, I brought up you've done a lot of coverage on Ancient Aliens, on the Great Pyramid. Where do you stand now? What was it built for? What was its purpose?
So that is still, in my opinion, an amazing question, because there are multiple ideas out there. For example, my good friend and colleague, Christopher Dunn, he wrote a book called The Giza Power Plant, in which he proposes that perhaps the pyramid, the Great Pyramid, was used as some sort of a power plant by using the Earth's magnetic fields and just the Earth's energy. And we all know that the Earth is, has huge powers to her in order for something like that to possibly be feasible. Now, according to some of the ancient Egyptological texts that I'm familiar with, it actually discusses the idea of King Zaurit, that at some point there was a time when the world or the people were eating from the same sources like the animals, and then the heavens opened and the guardians of the sky descended from the heavens, and they picked one of the smartest humans that they could find, and he happened to be Zaurit, and they took him up into the heavens, which wasn't heaven at all. It was some type of an orbiting space station where he was taught how to write, and he was taught in a whole bunch of scientific disciplines. And then he was given this writing instrument, this fast writing reed, this instrument with which he could write very, very quickly. And so he was given all this information. And then the next meeting that he had with these guardians of the sky, they were very solemn and very somber, and they said, well, we don't know how to tell you this, but your part of the world will be flooded within the next few months. And Saurit said, well, what about all the stuff that I just wrote down? Can you help me create a building, a structure in which we can hide those writings so that if everyone is wiped out, we can actually, we wouldn't have to start from scratch. And so it says that King Saurit, along with the guardians of the sky, built the pyramids in order to hide or to preserve knowledge for future generations. And who knows if we are those or are that future generation, that because of Saurit, by the way, the Hebrews, the Israelis, in their religious text, the same guy that the Egyptians called Saurit is the same guy that the Israelis or the Hebrews called Enoch. So right there, you have a very interesting parallel.
Now, and then if we go to the most ancient of ancient aliens, well, the ones that we know about, the Anunnaki, and we search for the missing link. Obviously, if you're a Darwinist, you know about the missing link, and it's something that we've read about since we were kids. It still hasn't shown up, but yet we have the Sumerian text, which directly refers to the Anunnaki creating us. I'm cool with that. Are you?
Of course, because, we have something that's called the Enuma Elish, which are the creation tablets of ancient Sumeria. And the Enuma Elish is very clear that at some point something happened to our ancestors, and it was a genetic, artificial mutation of our genes. And yes, of course I'm okay with that, because there are modern-day geneticists who are looking at our DNA and our genetics, and okay, so there are a lot of geneticists who ascribe to the idea, okay, it was all coincidence. But there are a handful of geneticists who say that coincidence alone cannot explain away how we came into being, or, how Homo sapiens came into existence, because clearly there is a fossil record, but in that fossil record there really isn't a transitionary period that explains how we went from one species to the next. So the idea is that perhaps our entire planet is some type of an experimental laboratory for new species, and we are the ones that made it, because a lot of the Neanderthals, for example, coexisted with Homo sapiens, and while they had bigger brains than us, we ultimately, Homo sapiens, not only did we survive or edge out Neanderthal, but we actually became, from Homo sapiens 50,000 years ago, we became Homo sapiens sapiens, the wise man. Not just the wise man, but the wise man. And 50,000 years ago, something happened to our intelligence that geneticists are questioning. What happened? And I don't have a problem in suggesting that we may have received some type of a secret sauce, as Kevin Burns likes to call it, and that this is why we are who we are today. And this is why we should be incredibly eager to make it work on this planet, because this is our future, to go elsewhere and spread our intelligence.
And it's such a important point to make here, because the fossil record is what we have. Now, granted, we don't have a lot of fossils because fossils are rare. Human skull There's reasons why we don't have tens of thousands of them. We've only got a few. But the fossil record is the fossil record. And the evolutionary piece that would need to be there would be millions of years of evolution. And we would have more examples of ourselves making that, filling in the holes in the fossil record, and it doesn't exist. It just pops up 150, 160,000 years ago, and here we are, perfect, upright, beautiful, no hair, our skin, our brain, right, our facial features, and it just appeared out of nowhere. But yet they just want to say, well, it just happened that way. And they
here.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's cool that you should say that, because there is such a thing as this prehistoric fish called the coelacanth, and the coelacanth has been around for 65 million years, and it was thought to have been extinct. And at the turn of the 20th century, from around 1905 or 1910, they actually discovered, alive and well, in the South Pacific Ocean, I think, they discovered coelacanths. And the coelacanths look the exact same way as they did 65 million years ago. So if you subscribe to the idea of Darwinian evolution, which, by the way, I agree with Darwinian evolution, but even Darwin himself says that something doesn't make sense, and therefore we have the missing link. That is why we have the missing link, because nobody can explain what the heck the missing link is. And so with the coelacanths, we have a prime example in showing that gradual evolution does not take place, because if you have 65 million years of a time span, and after 65 million years, the coelacanth looks exactly like it did 65 million years, well, I mean, I'm sorry. Why wasn't the coelacanth given any opportunity to, turn himself into an upright walking person or whatever, So what's the deal there? So something else happened. And by the way, I'm saying this very lovingly, with an idea of let's just explore the question.
That's it. And the other part that I want to ask you about is, certainly we can discuss evolution and the millions of species that are on this planet, but there's one thing that is for sure. We are unique. Us, humans. Nothing else has developed into laughing, thinking, building, nothing else. We are it. We are singular. And that the odds of that are just enormous.
No, I agree with you, because, all of us, I think we can agree that, dolphins are intelligent, and my cat is intelligent, and people's dogs are intelligent, and, they will bring you their leash if it's time to go for a walk and all this. But none of the dolphins, none of the cats, none of the dogs have ever written symphonies or created carvings and paintings. So, let's define what type of intelligence we are talking about here, because it's absolutely ridiculous to say that a dolphin is more intelligent than we are, because where is their output? And to say that the dolphins may have transcended, this knowledge level, and that they're beyond, creating poetry and creating plays and creating music, well, enough already. Where is it from the past? And, so it's all interesting to explore these ideas, but we have to remain within a reason of possibility.
Staying on that same thought, with the basic building blocks of everything on planet Earth, everything is the same 20 amino acids, everything is the same basic chromosome pairs, and then we have earthworms and we have us, right? Okay, but that's just that's reality. Do you think that those same amino acids and and DNA strands subscribe to the rest of the universe? In other words, do you think when our ET brothers are here or come back to visit us that we're going to look the same?
Absolutely. In fact, this is a book that my colleagues and friends, Robert Boval and Chandra Wickramasinghe, they have just finished a book about it. They called it the Cosmic Womb. And in the Cosmic Womb, they explore the idea whether life actually originated on Earth or whether it originated elsewhere. And I was there on the evening when Dr. Wickramasinghe and Robert decided to write that book. It was at the 80th birthday celebration with Erich von Daniken in outside of Cologne, Germany.
Right.
And, Dr. Wickramasinghe was at the birthing hour when, with Francis Crick, he proposed that, in fact, the origin of life on Earth wasn't coincidence, but that, in fact, it was the result of a direct seeding of the planet, which they referred to, or they termed this idea as panspermia and as direct panspermia. And the difference between the two is that one can be attributed to probability and coincidence, and direct panspermia can only be attributed to if somebody actually sent the seeds directed at the solar system that we're living in, while knowing that here their seeds would have potential to survive and grow. And so what you just asked me, that, who knows if, or that they may look like us, I wholeheartedly agree with you that when they make themselves known in the next 10 or 20 years and the hatch opens, the big secret, the big surprise will be that when they walk out, we will be looking at a mirror image of ourselves, because the question is no longer, or should have never been, what do the extraterrestrials look like, but do we look like the extraterrestrials? Because in the ancient sacred texts it says, including the Old Testament, in fact in the first page of the Old Testament, that the gods, plural, not God, created man in their own image. So right there, if that is even remotely rooted in reality, we are them. And we don't even have to ask the question, what do they look like? Because we already know. We see them every day in the mirror.
You've been all over the world. You've been to just about every major megalithic site. And as I look at all of the evidence, I see a lot of similar things, too, as well. That one is the how do I want to say this? I want to say this correctly. The rocks that are the megalithic sites that are just arbitrary, but yet they fit together, like Cusco we were just talking about. But the same evidence is in Machu Picchu. Same type of ideas. The same thing goes on in Egypt too, as well. These irregular walls. Now, I can't either. You have one evolutionary strand where everybody is having the same ideas, but I doubt that anybody in Giza was talking to somebody in Machu Picchu, right? I just don't see that happening. It's possible. Or we had 3 or 4 evolutionary paths, or we had one source of knowledge that was instructing each one of these cultures what to do. But when we bring those questions up like you do, an archaeologist or somebody, a historian is going to say, you're not giving ancient man enough credit. Same problems, you're going to have the same solutions. And I just disagree with that.
Well, look, and this is, one of the greatest misconceptions, that we are not giving credit. That's not the case, and I'm very familiar with those accusations, and I ponder the ways with which to turn these kinds of questions around, because I've never suggested that, aliens built any of these ancient sites, but it was the local cultures that actually, either in oral traditions or even in written documents, whether it was on stone or on paper or papyrus or some sort of written stuff, or on cylinder seals, or on cylinder tablets, on clay tablets, where it says that their knowledge of achieving magnificent things was imparted upon them by celestial beings descending from the sky. And that is a fact that our ancestors, including European cultures, because I'm often accused, well, you're only saying that, Central and South Americans and Africans had help from aliens or from the gods from above, while you never say anything about, ancient Europe and stuff like this. And the truth of the matter is, that's not the case. Where do you think the whole Parthenon of the ancient Greek gods came from? Mm-hmm. Or the Scandinavian gods of, Asgard and Thor and Odin, all this? That is all 100% rooted in the Ancient Astronaut Theory. So, to suggest that only people from South America and from Africa had help from, aliens back in the day, it's complete nonsense. The entire planet was visited by those extraterrestrials that imparted knowledge to every one of our, well, not everyone, but many of our ancient cultures. And the Scandinavian mythologies and legends talk about it. Where do you think Asgard was?
Right.
I cannot wait for the next movie of Thor, but, the proverbial Rainbow Bridge, who the heck knows? It may have been some type of a wormhole with which they were able to travel between solar systems, if not even longer distances. And, because we have to understand that with every mythology, whether it is in Africa or in Scandinavia, Greece, or South Africa, or Australia, it's rooted in reality. And the further you go back, I don't care what ancient culture you go to, it always begins the same, that someone or something came from the sky. And that is not coincidence. And, to me, it is such an amazing exploration of that question, because what could be more revolutionary and exciting to actually learn how did it all begin? And if it all began due to somebody else's graces, well, come on. That's amazing. At least we know how it began, and it's no speculation of, these compound chemicals went from here to there, and you have 50,000 scientists who say, well, that's not quite possible.
Right.
Well, what's the other way? What's the other solution? See, here's one thing that I think I may have mentioned on Fade to Black before. The Ancient Astronaut Theory, whether people want it or not, does satisfy Occam's razor. And Occam's razor says that usually, in the end, if you have the exploration of a question, the simplest of answers is the correct one. Well, the Ancient Astronaut Theory is the simplest of answers, whether you like it or not.
What about the spiritual side? Does our soul come with the creation of us, and does E.T. have a soul?
Yes, I think that any and all living beings, personally, I think that any and all living beings have a soul. I was 4 or 5 years ago, I was on a radio program, and the host genuinely
Are you there?
Hello, are you there?
Okay, I got you. Okay.
Okay. What I was saying is that a few years ago, I had a conversation with a radio host. I was on the air, and he genuinely questioned whether or not a dog or a cat has a soul.
No.
And
no,
yes,
he did. Did he really?
Yes.
Is he still employed? Is he still on the air? Okay. All right. And continue. I didn't mean to jump in, but I've got 4 dogs.
No. But I had the exact same reaction to you, like you. And I was like, we are completely at loggerheads right now because we can't even have a conversation because you inherently think that dogs and cats don't have a soul because they're considered, I guess, according to the Bible, lower life forms or whatever. But to me, we're all the same. A living being, if you have a beating heart, and you have feelings. There are nerves, there's skins, there's cells, so, to say that if you pinch a person and then you pinch an animal, that the animal in some way, shape, or form doesn't feel the way the person does, well, how can we have a conversation because we're all made out of bone and skin and flesh? So, so there seems to be this discrepancy or this elitist attitude that if you're a human, you have a soul, and if you don't, if you're not a human or an alien, that you don't have a soul. And some have even suggested, which is the dumbest proposition ever that I've ever heard, is that the aliens are here to harvest our souls. I mean, get the hell out of here. It's ridiculous to propose this.
It's possible. I've heard.
No. No. How would the aliens be alive without a soul? It's your life energy.
Right. And what I mean by saying it's possible, Giorgio, I just like you, I constantly just put everything on the table. One day, you know what I mean? One day, you and I and the rest of us are going to sit back and go, so this is what's been going on. Right.
And that will be the best because you know what? I think we're all wrong, all of us.
I'm so with you. And I'm so with you on that point. You and I are going to knock one back at Contact in the Desert next month. Can you believe it's coming up in 4 weeks? Man, we've done this every year together, and I'm very excited about it.
I know. Let me tell you, I mean, from May 19th until the 22nd, Friday until Monday, I have to tell you this, and I don't know about you, but Contact in the Desert, they created this 5 years ago, and this will be our 5th year, and it's still my most favorite conference out of the whole year because everybody will be there, speaker-wise, and, there will be at least 3,000 people of like mind. So if you're listening to this, and I don't care if you're listening to this in Japan or, wherever, get yourself to Joshua Tree. It's an amazing place, and the people you'll meet, it's like a gigantic fan convention where everyone there is of the same like mind. And, I think it's an amazing place. And you're in the middle of the desert. You can see the Milky Way at night. And it is my favorite conference of the year.
Yeah. There's not enough can be said about it. But I'm going to do this year at Contact. I've got a friend that's flying in from Hong Kong. He was just on the show with me a couple of weeks ago. His name's Chuck. And he came up to me last year. And he goes, Jimmy, I came in from Hong Kong. I'm a fade or not, right? And I was like, what? Now, he's got his own TV show over there and his own radio show, and he's got his own thing going on. He's a really great guy. But from Hong Kong, right? And this is his thing, his moment. And I am going to introduce him to you. He is absolutely unbelievable because you're right. They come in the fans come in from all around the world, and it's just a bunch of like minds there. I've got to introduce you to Chuck. Now, I wanted to ask you, talking about the likelihood, right? You said maybe in the next 10 to 20 years, and I agree with that. But we have had these announcements coming nearly monthly now, Giorgio, from NASA, right? Another exoplanet, another alien world, radio signals, fast radio bursts. And it's every single month now, this drip, drip, drip of contact and the search for contact. But then last week, they made the announcement of Enceladus and Europa, possibly having alien life in the oceans. Do you think one of these announcements is going to be pretty dang dramatic pretty soon here? Are they warming us up for something?
Sure, because look, the writing is on the wall. I mean, if you look at what just happened a few months ago, where they released UFO files, 30,000 or 300,000 UFO files in Europe that allegedly before we were told that none of the governments are looking for UFOs, nobody's interested in these things, and then they're releasing government documents that go back at least 50 years. So, in a strange way, we've sort of not been told the truth in a very long time. And, what you just mentioned is correct insofar that disclosure may be happening, at a certain time, and we're kind of waiting for this press conference. But here's the thing that I've been saying for a very long time, that we are in disclosure. It's not a one-time event. It's a process. And so, I think that disclosure is something that we're all a part of right now, and I think that it's quite possible that within the next 20 or 30 years, we're going to be told the truth. But here's the thing, that to you and me, to the Fadernauts, and to the audience of a lot of these alternative radio programs, what we talk about, we're all preaching to the choir. But the rest of the world, they're not so happy with the thought of extraterrestrials. It depends what country you go to. But oftentimes, the moment you raise the question of ETs, they think it's a joke. But, I think that the reason why Ancient Aliens has become a successful show is that show as well is part, and including your show and Coast to Coast and the books of David Childress and Erich von Daniken, we are all part of the disclosure movement. Because can you imagine having had a show like this 20 years ago?
Right.
It would have been impossible.
Right.
But now, because they realized that it's better to embrace the truth instead of lying what is really going on.
Well, I'm going to get to Gobekli Tepe before I have to let you go, and I know that you've got to fly first thing in the morning to Japan. But Erich von Daniken, when Chariots of the Gods came out, it seemed like it was the right time to do that, because although there was the skeptics and some ridicule out there, by and large, it was a tremendous success, and I think the public needed to, they had questions, and that book and film certainly answered those and allowed everybody to just go, you know what, that makes sense to me. And that opened up the doors for everything else to come.
Well, Erich himself actually says that. He says that the time was ripe because, the German version of Chariots of the Gods came out almost 50 years ago in 1968, which was 1 year before the moon landing. But the fact that there was a moon landing in 1969 definitely contributed to the popularity of Chariots of the Gods, because if you remember, one of the first scenes that we did in the original Ancient Aliens episode, and this was a strike of genius by the executive producer Kevin Burns. We human beings already became, or we already are, extraterrestrials on the moon. So as of 1969, we human beings can call ourselves extraterrestrials because, for all intents and purposes, and as far as we know, we're the only other species that has ever gone to the moon. So why is the question of extraterrestrials so difficult if we ourselves as a society have already gone to the moon as extraterrestrials? Well, extra lunestrials, I guess,
right,
on the moon. But here's the thing. It seems to me that, and Peter Colosimo, he's one of the first big ancient astronaut researchers of the late 60s, early 70s. Peter and then Colosimo, Kolosimo. One of his first books he wrote was called "We Are Not the First." And it's true that all around us, history is repeating itself. And we have to understand the idea that perhaps we are not the first, but we should embrace that in this time and age, we are the first and we're exploring stuff, but we shouldn't be too surprised if somebody else tried to explore or do the same thing. I don't think that's an insult at all. It just shows how ingenious we are to follow the footsteps of other geniuses.
Yes, and the first crack at it that we had back in the early 70s, our technology was so primitive, but what did we do? Pioneer 10 and Pioneer 11. First thing, man, we're shooting these things out of the solar system, and we're going to put pictures of us on it to show E.T., right? And so how can we not expect E.T. to be doing the same thing back towards us?
No, and then you have, I don't know, if I would urge all of the Fadernauts and you, Jimmy and Rita, to please watch the movie Hidden Figures. It is amazing what we've accomplished as a human species, to go and travel out there, because it just goes to show that, because here's the thing. In the 1980s, 1990s, Max Flint and Otto Binder, they wrote a book called Mankind, Child of the Stars, in which these two guys, they work for NASA. They basically proved the idea that the only reason that us, Homo sapiens, why we understand mathematics the way we do, higher mathematics, is due to the fact that we came to from the stars, and we need to go back to the stars, because without that theoretical mathematics, it's an absolute impossibility for us to go back out there. So we have to ask ourselves the question, why do we have such advanced brains? Where did this intelligence come from, and what is the purpose for it? Is it so we can spread intelligence elsewhere? And I think the resounding answer to that is a yes.
Göbekli Tepe wasn't supposed to exist, right? Everything was at 3000 BC. Before that, nothing. Yes. And here we have Göbekli Tepe, and the dates for it keep getting pushed back. It's getting older and older. But it's about as exciting as it gets. What is Göbekli Tepe to you?
So Göbekli Tepe is a truly amazing site in present-day Turkey. It's close to the border of Syria, and they found these megalithic temples with these massive stone blocks that have these carvings of different animal life on them. And what I love about the place is that goes back to about 1992 or 1996. I'm unsure about the date right now. But in the early 1990s, one of my very good friends, Dr. Robert Schoch, made the argument that the Giza Plateau, especially the Sphinx, goes back further than what mainstream archaeology tells us how old it is. And then he was challenged in multiple panels where other mainstream archaeologists like Mark Lehner, amongst others, challenged him in questioning him. Well, why would you, as a geologist from Boston University, why would you say such a thing? And you're not even an Egyptologist, and blah blah blah. And they said, the only way that we would accept your theory is if you can show us another place of extreme antiquity. And this conference, or this questioning, was in 1992 or 1993, if memory serves me correctly.
That's right.
And then in 1996 or in 1998, Göbekli Tepe was discovered, and it was 12,000 years old minimum. So had he, Dr. Schoch, had the opportunity to present Göbekli Tepe when he was on trial, and he was never on trial. I mean,
but at that conference, he was on trial
right now.
But at that conference, he was on trial at that conference.
He would have had people that accepted what he said.
Right. Right, and the gap. This is what's crazy here. The gap between Giza and Mesopotamia and Göbekli Tepe is 7,000 years. 7,000 years. It just boggles the mind. It wasn't supposed to exist, but clearly it does. So where does the intelligence come from? At 10,000 BC, where does it come from to teach people about A, mathematics, B, how to quarry, how to carve, how about art, how about the food and the organization of civilization that had to occur at 10,000 BC was when it wasn't supposed to exist? So clearly somebody was teaching somebody.
Yes. No, I mean, and that's the whole point.
Yes.
That, in fact, that whole area is considered to be one of the places in the world that is known as a cradle of civilization, or a navel from which mankind originated, like a navel of the world. It's a center. And, I don't think that our history shows these places just out of coincidence. I mean, even Easter Island is considered a navel of the world, and so is Tiwanaku, and so is Delphi, and so is, for example, Göbekli Tepe. So if it is a place where mythology says it's the origin of man, or one of the places for the origin of mankind, let's explore this, because what if the entire planet was nothing else but a barren place, and then due to some terraforming and due to some extraterrestrial influences, Earth became what it has become? And if you subscribe to the idea that throughout the universe the places that can sustain life are special, well, what if where we are right now has always been a very special and life-conducing place?
Right.
Of course, they would have come here to start this, because Earth would have flashed out like a beacon for the continuation of intelligence and future genetics.
One last question before I let you go, and for me, I'm just completely fascinated. But again, mainstream Orthodox academia just refuses to acknowledge this place, and I don't know why. And that's Karahunj in Armenia. It's 2,000, 3,000 years older than Stonehenge. It's right there. It's in the same area as Göbekli Tepe. It's in the Armenian highlands. But yet nobody wants to talk about it. Karahunj, like Göbekli Tepe, should be the lead story on the evening news. It's an extraordinary place of high technology, and it shows metallurgy too. At 5,000, 7,000 BC. What do you think about Karahunj, and do you think that it was pointing to the stars?
Absolutely, because at Karahunj, what you have are not only megalithic stones, but you have stone circles that are akin to what we find at Stonehenge. And even more so, you have these carvings of these really odd oval faces with big oval eyes that look like modern-day grays. Now, if modern gray days had anything to do with Karahunj, your guess is as good as mine.
Right.
But we have these bizarre things, these carvings there. But at the same time, what's even more interesting, or what I just mentioned, is that the stones themselves are aligned to astronomical constellations.
There are literally holes in these large stones that if they don't line up today, they certainly lined up to something in years past.
Oh yeah, and this is where Robert Bauval's work becomes interesting, because if you were to use all the shafts that he is talking about inside the Great Pyramid, and you shine a light through those corridors into space, if you were to shoot those beams of light into space today, they, of course, would not line up with Orion's belt or the constellation of Orion. But the reason why he is so compelling in his research is because it all coincides with stuff from 12,000 years ago, which was the golden age of Egypt. And so Karahunj, of course, today does not align with whatever it was back then, but it may give us an idea that whoever gave the knowledge for these places came from those constellations, just like we have many ancient archaeological sites that point to the direction of the Pleiades. Well, why would it do that? Well, perhaps many of the ancient sites that point to a constellation, maybe those are the calling cards of the extraterrestrials, where they came from.
And where we need to go to.
Well, I agree with you, Jimmy, but that may be a few 500 years off, because we need the money and the technology.
Giorgio, thank you so much. And we're going to see you at Contact in the Desert. And really quick, what's your presentation going to be on this year?
So this year, I am going to include some new material that I just came across in India, because one of the biggest revelations that I've had in the last 4 weeks is that the origin of Buddhism was never the worship or philosophy of Buddha, but it was in fact the worship of what they call a lower and a greater vehicle from the cosmos. Well, right there, with all the symbolism and the carvings that I saw, the case was clear. In ancient India, they were worshiping cargo cult type things.
I can't wait to see it and hang out with you. And safe travels to Japan, my friend. And 4 weeks from now, I'll see you out in Joshua Tree. Thank you so much for hanging out with us in the Fadernauts tonight, Giorgio. All the best.
It's been my pleasure. And the Fadernauts, they're the best. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Giorgio. Safe travels, my friend.
Thank you.
Giorgio Tsoukalos, everybody. Follow Giorgio on Twitter at Tsoukalos. And he will be at Contact in the Desert along with everybody else May 19th through the 22nd right here in Joshua Tree, California. And, of course, Ancient Aliens. Giorgio Tsoukalos, the very, very best. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'm going to take a break right here and then open up the phone lines. 323-825-5045. What did you think about that conversation, Fade or not? I'll be right back.
Vivica Fox here, and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
Balance of Nature's fruits and veggies.
I had gout in both my knees, and it's gone.
Well, I'm pretty stupid. I should have ordered it 15 years ago. Best thing I ever got in my... It's the most effective product that I've ever bought in my life.
He had eczema on his hand, and it cracked for years. He did anything from doctor, every cream, everything. And 3 months on the veggies and fruit, it was gone.
They're just awesome. They keep asking me, what am I doing? I told them what I did with my cholesterol. I had the blood test, right? And it went down 100 points. 262, now it's 162. Everything is just perfect.
Call now to find out how to get your free month's supply of Balance of Nature. Call 800-2468-751. That's 800-2468-751. Call now, 800-2468-751. Or go online to balanceofnature.com.
Use promo code TSL.
Would odors, mold, and mildew describe your basement or crawl space? It doesn't have to be that way. Transform them into a fresh, healthy, usable one with the technologically advanced Wave Moisture Control Units. The computerized operation maximizes moisture control and also expels harmful radon, combustion gases, and numerous other pollutants. Dehumidifiers are old technology that do nothing for air quality and waste energy. Wave units are intelligent, self-monitoring, do not need maintenance, and will save you hundreds in electricity. Wave units are still running effectively over 15 years. They've been tested and installed in public and military housing and by property managers nationwide. Buy a unit now, and if your home is not fresher and drier, you can return it for a full refund for up to 12 months. What have you got to lose? Call now. 1-888-618-WAVE. 1-888-618-WAVE. Or visit mydryhome.com. That's mydryhome.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
What's up, Fade or Nots? Studio Dome loves Fade to Black and the F2B audience so much that they have put together the ultimate stereo Bluetooth system. They've done it just for you. Man, check this out. The Studio Dome SBB2 stereo system is here. It's featuring 2 Studio Boombox 2 SBB2 wireless Bluetooth speakers, packed in its own custom hard shell case. This Studio Dome system features the very latest in stereo Bluetooth technology. The 2 full-range boomboxes are in true wireless stereo. You've got to hear this. It's amazing. It's just $129, and use the promo code JCRTWS, and you'll also get free shipping. It's simple. Just go to JimmyChurchRadio.com, click on the Studio Dome banner. Go Beckley Tepe.
This is Kristen, Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Follow Giorgio at Tsoukalos. Dude's got about 150,000 followers on Twitter. Follow Giorgio at Tsoukalos. What'd you think about that? That was a great conversation with Giorgio. I'm going to get you some of my thoughts on that in just a second. Phone lines are open, 323-825-5045. What did you think about that conversation? We've had Giorgio on the show many times, and I think I've had him on Coast, too, as well. I think that was the most open conversation yet, and they've all been great. But he was pretty open tonight. And what'd you think about that? I thought the spiritual aspect of it was pretty cool, too, as well. But now, a couple of things. I agree with him. The point that he was trying to drive home is that he doesn't give... Oh, I didn't ask him about the memes, right? And, man, he almost single-handedly invented the meme. Or at least not him, but he's been the subject of it. That everything is aliens. That's his answer. But his take on that is the opposite. They just want to ask that question and to put that on the table. That's all. And he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right that once you go and insert into just about anything, if you can insert that and ask that question, certainly the question becomes easier to answer. Occam's razor, right? It really, really, really does. I have such issue with somebody sent me some email the other day, highly critical on a couple of statements that I continue to make on this show. And one of those statements that I make a lot is that while the rest of the world was running around in animal skins, that the Great Pyramid was built, and gave me a long list of stuff. No, they weren't, man. They weren't wearing. They had textiles. They had look. First off, it's just a general statement, and second, the rest of the world was not running around in 400 count Egyptian cotton. No. Okay. No, there may have been pockets of civilization and cultures around the world that were doing that. Yes. But by and large, at that point in time, no, it was still a hunter-gatherer. I mean, there was some civilization. Things were settling down and figuring themselves out, but not to the point where you had high math and architecture and engineering and everything else that it took to build the Great Pyramids. And that is my point, and that's what I drive home. So when you start to insert that question about ancient alien theory and what could possibly have come into play here, it answers those questions. I haven't heard another answer that works. I haven't. And certainly with the success of Ancient Aliens and the questions that it puts out there for everybody, that the education system and academia has not responded back with an alternative. It hasn't happened. It has not happened. I have not heard anything satisfactory at all to answer the questions for Cusco or Göbekli Tepe or Machu Picchu, Pumapunku. I haven't heard anything that works. There's one other point that I want to drive home, not only with Giza, but all the other megalithic sites that are around the world that are complex. When you have the engineering level that is involved with not only Machu Picchu or Giza or the Serapeum, Luxor, go all over Japan and China, what you don't have there are plans. You don't have drawings. Pumapunku, to recreate each one of those H blocks, think about that. Identical. You would have to have plans, right? You've got a dude that shows up and says, okay, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to recreate this each time. They don't exist. And the same thing is with Egypt. When you look at, I'll give you one classic example hard engineering that is impossible with Giza. He brought up the Grand Gallery. Yep, we can put that on the table. There's lots of other things we can put right there. But I'm going to tell you something. To carve a 300-foot tunnel perfectly square and perfectly straight through the rock, think about that. The engineering and the tools that would be involved to do that perfectly straight. To do it perfectly straight today, it would be nearly impossible. And who would do it? I mean, it's just like a crazy thought. Why would you do it? Perfectly straight, perfectly square. Now, I'm just saying that at 2650 or 3000 BC, allegedly, when the pyramid was built, that level of engineering just didn't exist, and it wasn't done by line of sight. Nobody just showed up there and said, "Okay, we're gonna go down 300 feet. We're gonna go up 300 feet. We're gonna do these square tunnels, 3 foot square, perfectly straight." And this is no, you just don't dig holes like that. Standing there, and to the point that I've driven home a million times, that level of civilization wasn't sophisticated enough to sit there and just go and do that. There were no laser leveling tools. Think about that. So when you insert knowledge coming from somewhere else to get this stuff done, then I'm okay with it, because that makes sense. But just to say you're not giving Stone Age man, or you're not giving ancient man or ancient civilizations enough credit, doesn't fly with me. It just doesn't. It doesn't. Now, going back to a couple of points that he made that I tend to agree with, that if we have the same building blocks for life here, on everything on planet Earth is, same 20 amino acids and the same basic chromosome pairs and everything else, and then after that it blossoms into whatever it's going to grow into. But if it is the same here, wouldn't it be the same somewhere else? Right? The same building blocks. And if that is the same, now we take other things into account. How much gravity, how much water, how much, to allow a species to evolve. But if we take all of that basically into account, then would you have 2 legs, 2 arms, a head, stereo vision, 2 ears, hair, right? Basically the same. Now, if you have less gravity on another planet, you're going to be taller. You're going to have more gravity, you're going to be a little shorter. Those things come into play. But basically speaking, would we just look the same? Now, and the reason why I bring that up, and he brought that up with Kara-Hunj. Kara-Hunj, 7,000 BC, right? 5,000 to 7,000 BC. It's in Armenia, and it's on a mountaintop, and it is definitely an astrological Stonehenge type of site. But in the stone circles that are there are holes that line up to different constellations. Which ones? The stones may have moved and so forth over the years, but nonetheless, they are there. But off of the site, there is a wall that he was referring to that clearly shows grays. Now, if you go back to, let's go back 15, 20, 30,000 years. Let's go to the cave paintings in the south of France or Spain or Australia. Those artists at 30,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, painstakingly represented, let's just go with the bulls, right? Clearly perfect. And horses, absolutely perfect. 3D, beautiful. And then when it comes to representing a human figure, they go they go out of the wheelhouse. They go off of where is the flowing hair, the beautiful woman, or the handsome man, or the muscles? No. Now they've got big eyes and antenna and helmets. I just don't get that. Right? Now, just think about that for a second. Now, I don't need explanation here. I know that those artists were recreating something on those walls and doing a beautiful job of it. But how when it comes to us, when it comes to humans, they don't look like humans. But everything else is anatomically correct and beautiful, majestic, running and jumping and flowing manes and just beautiful, right? But it comes to humans and they don't know that's imagination. They were imagining something. I disagree with that. And the amount of labor, there was a couple of things that that Giorgio and I were talking about. Let's get real here. Paint brushes, that took work, right? That took work. Creating colors and creating paint. That's chemistry. And it's engineering. But yet they were able to create it. Now, okay, thank you. Thank you, Mark Tarana. That's exactly what I'm talking about right there. Look at that. Yeah, right? But they can do the dancing bulls perfect. Is this to go into a cave 20,000 years ago, to go onto another megalithic site and carve something, to go and do this. Thank you. You guys have got this stuff flowing tonight. That's what I'm talking about. Look at those cave paintings. That's exactly my point. How come everything else is all perfect, but us humans are just messed up, especially with the heads? Is this, it took a lot of work. So for them to take out the time from hunting and rest, right? The two most important things, you are eating and you are sleeping and you are staying alive. To take away from all of that to go and do these cave paintings, something important was going down. They wanted to preserve it. They wanted somebody else in the future, whether it's somebody else, another tribe coming along, right? Or in the far future, to represent exactly what they were seeing at that time. And that's what you need to understand that. So why would they depict humans like they did? Unless they weren't human at all, unless there was another message here. But these are clearly helmets, antenna. You know, at 30,000 years ago, I just don't see humans running around with helmets on. Fantastic conversation with Giorgio. Absolutely mind-bending. Mind-bending. When he mentioned Robert Schoch, I want to go back to this. When he mentioned Robert Schoch, what he's talking about, I forget the name of the Congress or conference, but it was all of the geologists around the world, all the professionals, and they get together. And they planned this. He was going to sit down and present his evidence, and he went up against Lerner, and they literally on trial, and all of the PhDs and engineers and everybody, all those professionals are sitting out there with their arms crossed to listen to the evidence. And what Schoch did not have, because that's what I believe it was Lerner, literally said, dude, I would agree with you right now if you can give us this. And he didn't have Göbekli Tepe in his back pocket. Had he had Göbekli Tepe back then, it would have been a whole nother situation. But he didn't. We have Göbekli Tepe now. And that's a very important point, and I'm glad that Giorgio brought that up. So when you go and listen to the show again, remember these points. I think they're all very, very important. Man, Mark Tarana's busting out. That's exactly what I'm talking about right there. Somebody explain these images to me. I'm retweeting all of these the cave paintings in Australia. It's exactly what I'm talking about. Yep. There you go. All right. Giorgio Tsoukalos, Contact in the Desert. The banners are over at jimmychurchradio.com. If you go and click at Contact in the Desert, you will take you straight to their website, lodging, info, food. The one great thing about Contact in the Desert is food is on site. They have a great cafeteria, great chefs, and you can get all of that right there on their website. Now, this is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I want to thank Giorgio Tsoukalos for coming in here again tonight. an amazing conversation. Thank you, Giorgio. Follow him at Tsoukalos on Twitter. Fade to Black's executive producers Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Paul, Mark D. Kovar, LJ3, Renee, Jonas. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, Mark D. Kovar. Fady by Dale. Webmasters Drew the Geek. Music Doug Aldrich. Intro Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Syndication KGRA The Planet. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2017 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, Cortland Dahl is going to be here. We're going to discuss his new book, Francis Bacon and the United States. Oh, yeah. That's tomorrow night. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Until then, everybody be safe. Go Beckley Tappy.